Hey there, Suzi here. What do you need to do right now to grow a profitable, sustainable business that doesn't burn you out? Join me for a brand new workshop on Sunday, the 14th of April. Find out the one tweak that you can make to your process that's a game changer for actually achieving your money goals. Plus, discover the big business secret that women in small business are borrowing with massive success. To register for the Your Next Money Move workshop, head to herbusiness.network/Your Next Money Move. That's herbusiness.network/Your Next Money Move. Hi, you're listening to the Content Sells Podcast, the show all about how to create content to attract, convert, and keep your ideal clients. Welcome to episode 233. I'm Suzi Dafnis, and here with me is my co-host, Michelle Falzon. Hey, Michelle, how are you?
Hey there, Suzi. I am doing very well. I'm keen for today's topic because this is something we know. You and I both know this. It is one of those fundamental things that makes the biggest difference with our marketing. I mean, we can have all the right tactics and strategies, but if this foundation piece is not right, it can be really hard for a business to succeed.
I absolutely agree 100%. And like you said, this is something we're seeing and providing feedback on all the time. And what we're talking about today is business models and how to know the right business model for you, for your goals, for what you're trying to achieve in your business. So let's start with by asking, what is a business model? What is your business model? So a business model is how you've designed your business to make money. So it's a combination of decisions you've made about what you sell, what products or services, how you sell them, who you sell to, and how much for. That is all part of your model. And from a big picture perspective, there are many, many, many different types of business models, and I'm going to give you some examples. So we know the brick and mortar model, right? This is the traditionalist business model that involves selling goods or services to customers in a physical location. And it's common with retail, restaurants, service industries like salons or gyms, repair shops, therapists, brick and mortar. The other model, which has seen huge acceleration over the last 10 years, is the e-commerce model. Now, that's where you sell products or services online through an e-commerce platform. You might have something custom, or you might use Shopify or Etsy, or an online learning management system like Kajabi or Thinkific or Carta. And then there's the subscription model. Now, this is one of my personal favorites. This is where customers pay a recurring price at regular intervals to access a product or service. So this model can include things like software you pay a monthly fee for, and all of us likely have some software, or entertainment that we pay for in this sort of model. Maybe you have an educational membership. You might belong to something like the Her Business Network. And a subscription model can also apply to products like subscription boxes where you might get something delivered regularly. It might be coffee. It can be like my colleague Sarah Williams' business. So Sarah's business, which is called Framed by Sarah, she curates monthly boxes of clothing, jewelry, and accessories for women. Isn't that fun? Now, I love this subscription model, and it's a model that I've had as part of my business for almost 30 years because it creates recurring revenue. You only need a customer to buy from you once, and then you get paid over and over again as long as they are a subscriber, a member, whatever the terminology is, as long as they are part of your membership or subscription. That's 3 of them. Here are a few more. Service-based business models, and we have a lot of members in this area, and this is where revenue is generated by providing services like consulting, marketing, yoga instruction. Now, these can be either online or in a physical location, but what you're ultimately providing is services. Franchises is another one. Now, in this model, as the business owner, you pay usually an initial fee and then ongoing royalties to use the brand, the systems, and get the support of the franchisor. Then there's a model which is affiliate marketing. Now, this is an uncommon one, but it can be really, really lucrative. And this is where you don't own any of your own products or services, but you promote and send customers to other people's products and you get paid a commission on those sales. And then there's social enterprise. And as the name indicates, this business model really aims to solve social problems or to improve communities or the environment or the quality of people's lives. And profits from social enterprise businesses are often reinvested into the mission of that organization rather than distributed to owners or shareholders. So some of these models, I just want to say, you can use in conjunction with each other. You might have like a hybrid business where you have more than one model. But these are business models. There's one more I want to mention, and it's direct selling. Now, this is a really old model. It's been around forever. Sometimes it gets a bad rap, but it's such a great business model for so many millions of people on this planet. And what that involves is selling products or services directly to consumers in a non-retail environment. So that could be selling them something in their homes, at their workplaces, online. And often these sales are made through one-on-one demonstrations, party plans, and even with online platforms.
Yeah, and you're right. We see millions of people still around the world, making a viable business model out of that. And the point is, you can make a viable business model, and many millions of people have, out of any of those business models. And, content marketing, the main theme of this show, content sells, applies to any of these business models. And like you said, Suzi, you might also have a business that combines these models. For example, you might be a highly paid SEO marketing consultant working directly with companies to help boost their results with search engine optimization. That's a service business model. And you might also offer a low-cost online course for those who want to do SEO but couldn't afford maybe your higher price one-to-one service. So they can learn about SEO and how to do it themselves via a course that you've provided at a much lower cost. And so you're really combining a couple of different business models there. And what I found when working with many different clients over the years was there was another way to think about business models that you could adopt that was very helpful. And we wanted to share it with you on today's show as well. And it was to look at what you were selling purely in terms of the volume and the value of what you plan to sell. So that is in terms of the quantity of something you needed to sell at a particular price in order to be viable. So whether you're doing direct selling, whether you've got a franchise, whether you're doing affiliate marketing, a service-based model, subscription model, brick and mortar, whatever it is, this idea of volume and value, these are the two big levers in, that you can possibly be thinking about as you are considering whether you've got the right business model right now, or you're thinking of starting a business and you're wondering exactly how to structure your business model. So imagine, as we sort of take this idea a little bit further about volume and value, imagine 4 quadrants. So you've got something in front of you and there's a box and it's divided into 4 parts. And the bottom left is where the value of what you're selling is low. And also the volume of what you're selling is low. It's low value and low volume, that bottom left quadrant. That is, you're not selling very many of something, and what it is you're selling doesn't have a very high value. And that quadrant is not really a viable business model. You can adopt that as a business model, but it's not really going to be a viable, sustainable business model. So now imagine the top left of this box, the top left quadrant. Now you're still selling something of low value, but now you're selling a high volume of it. You're selling a lot of something that's fairly low priced. That can be a very viable business model. Many, many, many businesses make a lot of money selling a low priced product at high volumes. And Suzi, I was thinking about just now an example of this, and the first thing that came to my mind was Tony's chocolate.
Yum. I love Tony's chocolate,
Oh,
especially
delicious.
the dark chocolate.
Oh, I know you love dark chocolate. I like there's a salted caramel one, right? But it's a low dollar something, but they sell thousands and thousands and thousands of bars of Tony's chocolate. And for our international listeners, check them out if you ever visit Australia, or maybe they sell them online. So, but yeah, there are just any countless number of products that are low dollar value and they are sold in massive quantities. And so while the profit margin on each item is low, when you sell a lot of them, you can end up very profitable, very sustainable. So that's really kind of the left-hand side of this box that we're imagining, where we're really selling like something at the low price end. Now imagine the right-hand side of this box where we're selling things at a higher price. Now the bottom right is we're selling things at a high value but a low volume. So we're not selling too much of them, but we're selling quite a high priced item. This is another viable business model. You can be really profitable selling only a small number of things if they are of high enough value and profit margin. For example, let's say you're a financial advisor and you only have 10 clients, but each one pays you $100,000 a year. That's $1 million business. That's a viable business. You're selling not many of something, but each of those things you're selling is at high value. So that's the bottom right section. Now imagine the final top right quadrant, the top right section. This is when you sell something of high value and you're selling a high volume of it. And many bigger businesses are able to operate at scale like this. They're selling something that's a high value and they're selling it at scale. So think about things like car dealerships where they're selling maybe $150,000 car, but they're selling, thousands of them a week across the country. So Toyota's dealerships or BMW's dealerships or, insert car brand here. Now that is again a very lucrative business model when done well, but, it requires a lot of moving parts. It requires a lot of scale. For most small businesses, we tend to find our viable business models in either the top left, that is a high volume of sales at a relatively low price, or the bottom right, where we sell not many of something, a lower volume, but at a higher dollar value. And so just for a moment, I know this, I've spoke about, left and rights and things like that, but just really all we're saying here is the left side of this box is really where we're selling something of a low dollar value. The right side is when we're selling something of a high dollar value. The bottom is where it's of a low volume and the top is where it's of a high volume. So just imagine that in your mind. And this is also why we want to stay out of that bottom left quadrant where we sell not much of something at a low price. It can be hard to get the scale needed to sell something that is not high price, to sell a lot of something that is a low price. So if you want to sell something that's $10, you've got to sell a lot of that. You've got to be really geared up to sell a lot of that. So just bear this kind of dynamic in mind. Now, the very top right quadrant where you're selling a lot of something at a high price, like the car dealership, that can be hard to do for a small business. This tends to be the realm of large corporations like car dealerships and universities and things like that. So this is a 4-part grid, and it's what I termed the volume value matrix. And it's a very powerful way for you to think about your business model. We're going to give you a visual copy of this matrix with today's show notes. So stay tuned for details later about how you can actually get a visual image of this framework as well.
Thank you, Michelle. This is such a powerful framework, and I know it's helped so many of the women in our mastermind and in the different courses we do to really understand what game they're playing, because what we do want as small business owners is to sell many low-priced products or services or a few high-priced products or services. Few of us, as you mentioned, are going to fit into the, car dealership kind of level of really expensive and thousands and cajillions of them. And we definitely don't want to be selling a few things that are inexpensive. And so it's about knowing this model, which, as Michelle said, we're going to give you a link where you can actually see it and start to work through your product mix and looking at where in the quadrant do your products and services fit right now. And you might find yourself having an aha about, oh my gosh, I have nothing in this quadrant and I really need something. And that starts a whole new conversation. What we found with this idea of really knowing your business model is things that can trip you up include going with what's popular or what you see your competitors doing, or starting with a business model and just sticking with it because you've been doing it for so long and not actually pivoting to a better business model when you realize you're working way too long for not enough money. The main thing is your business model needs to be the right one for you, for your goals, for how you like to work. And we're going to talk a little more about that later on. But for now, I want to give you an example. Let's say you don't have much of an email list. If that's you, you don't want to do a complex marketing funnel and drive a lot of traffic to your website in order to create a lot of volume sales if you're not set up with the tech or the customer service to handle a lot of sales. So say you ignore that advice and you go ahead and you still decide you're going to create a $47 course. You don't have an email list to promote it to. You don't want a complex funnel or to pay for a lot of traffic, but you decide to set up this course. Given the volume value matrix Michelle just explained, where does a $47 course? Well, it's definitely on the left-hand side of the matrix where the dollar value is low. So your options are to fit in the bottom left-hand quadrant where you sell just a low quantity of that low dollar thing, or the top left quadrant where you sell a high quantity of that low dollar $47 course. And we already know, because Michelle just told us, that we want to stay out of the bottom left quadrant, which is where you're selling very few of something inexpensive, right? Selling not many of something that's low priced is a really fast way to go out of business. But if you aren't set up and don't want to generate volume of sales for all the reasons I mentioned, maybe it's the tech, maybe you don't want to pay for leads, maybe you don't have a big email list, or you don't have a support team to handle additional business, then you're in a bind. Because you need to be in that top left quadrant, which is high volume, low value, to be viable. But you're not set up for it. But you need to be there, but you're not set up for it. Right? So it's this vicious cycle. And here's where we see a recurring problem. Many business owners unintentionally create a business model that has them end up in that bottom left-hand quadrant, not selling much of something that has a low price. And we are going to give you some examples. And perhaps they intended to be in the top left quadrant, selling a lot of that low cost thing, but they don't have the skill set, the marketing know-how, or the intention or the audience to get there.
Or you've just put your finger right on something, Suzi. I think that we do get influence. We see people out there saying, oh, I had a $1 million launch selling this $27 thing, right? But we don't see all of the mechanics that went behind it, all of the automation, all of the, massive marketing effort to get thousands of leads, to get thousands of customers paying you this small amount of money to make the whole thing work. And so we can start off thinking, well, look, it's got to be easier to sell a $27 thing, hasn't it? It's got to be easier to sell a $47 thing, and overlook that we don't have all those things you said. We don't have an email list. We're not set up with the tech. We can't handle volume. We don't know how to generate volume, all of those things. So we intend to be in that low dollar, high volume quadrant, but actually in reality, we suffer in that bottom left quadrant. And this can be heartbreaking, because we see people who are working hard. They've got good intentions. They even have a great product. The $47 thing they made is great. But when you've got the wrong business model, none of that really matters in a way, because for every step forward you make, you kind of automatically, without even trying, taking 2 steps back because of the structure you've created, because of the model that you're operating in.
That's exactly what we wanted to talk about in today's show, because the business model structure that you decide on is one of the biggest things that will set you up for success. Your model is going to determine what sort of marketing you do. That's going to determine what sort of money you make. So how do you know which business model is right for you? So let's stay with this volume value matrix a little bit longer, because whether you have an e-commerce business, a service-based business, a subscription model, or any of the business models I mentioned at the start of today's show, the volume value matrix is universal, which means you need to decide where on that matrix you're positioning your business. So for example, for a subscription or membership model, you could offer a $10 a month art membership or any sort of membership and decide that you're going to build a business capable of attracting, converting, and keeping 1,000 members. That's a number I always hear. So you have a sustainable, profitable revenue of $10,000 a month from your subscription model for your business. That sounds great, right? But you could also have a subscription model with a $5,000 a month membership and decide you're going to build a business that serves 2 customers a month so that you have a sustainable, profitable revenue of $10,000 a month. See how you got to the same number with a totally different way of approaching it. But what you don't want is a subscription model where you're charging $10 a month and you have 2 members. And I know that sounds really obvious, but in many ways, and unfortunately, that's the business model that many business owners are actually inadvertently creating for themselves, and it can be a real trap. And what I like about the volume value matrix is that it makes it easy to think about the business model you want in really simple terms. So do you want to make your money selling a lot of something low priced, or not much of something that's actually high priced, or is it somewhere in between? Because even though we're speaking about this as 4 options, you can be at different points in the quadrant. For example, you might sell one of something that's $1 million, right? You would be then very far right and low on that high value, low volume quadrant. What do I mean? When you get the download, you'll see what I mean, because you would be very far right and low on the high value, low volume quadrant. Or you might sell 20 of something that's $50,000 and still be in that bottom right quadrant, but not as far right on the value and not as low on the volume. So it can be a little bit of a spectrum as well. And I know we're talking about something here that's very visual in an auditory podcast. So know that the download is really going to help you be able to situate yourself where you are on this quadrant.
Yeah, and I like the point you're making there about it being a spectrum. So, you've got these 4 quadrants, but then you can be at sort of differing points in each of those quadrants based on the volume that you're selling and the value of what it is you're selling. And I also think, these 2 simple variables, the volume and the value, are a good way to think about what business model is right for you. And here's something that ties back to what you just said about, like, the business model you choose determines the marketing that you do and the money that you make. And, what type of marketing you do is very much connected to your business model. And when you get that mismatched, the bike starts to get very wobbly. Do you know what I mean? And we see this a lot too, where people mismatch the type of marketing strategy. They're sort of applying a big business marketing strategy or a high volume marketing strategy to something that really should be a low volume marketing strategy. And I'll explain a bit what I mean by that. Because as a rule of thumb, the higher the dollar value, the higher touch the sales process typically is. So if you think about it, when you've bought something that's really high dollar value, think about maybe an expensive car, or when you bought a house, or even when you bought like a really beautiful dress, like say you got married and you bought a wedding dress. That process was a lot higher touch if you were spending, a decent sum on a wedding dress or on a car or a house than if you were spending a very small amount on Tony's chocolates or a pair of jeans, right? So the higher the dollar value, the higher the touch process, sales process typically is. That means for a high ticket product, you might not need much tech or automation. Like, why would you build a complex, fully automated funnel to sell something that your customers are expecting you to be on the phone with them, or to be across the room with them, or measuring them, or visiting them on site and checking out their site, if it's a big solar installation or whatever it is, right? So you're going to more than likely need to be in a high-touch sales environment and a low-tech sales environment. You might use some tech and automation really at the front end of that funnel, where you're doing maybe a bit of email marketing or a bit of Facebook advertising to generate some initial leads. But very, very quickly in that high dollar value business model, you're going to move into a marketing process, a sales process that is high touch. You're speaking to them on the phone. You're meeting them in person. You're customizing things for them. You're giving them a tour. You might be even doing a little bit of work on spec. Let's say you're a financial advisor. You might get them in and do an initial diagnostic with them where they get to check you out. And it's worth it for you to invest a few hours of your time because this might turn into a $20,000 financial advisory service that you can bill every year. So typically, the higher the dollar value, the higher the touch sales process typically is. And that means for a high ticket product, you might not need much tech or automation, but you do need time. You do need people. You do need more sophisticated expertise because a high dollar buyer is expecting you to know your stuff. Even if it's just you to start with, you might ultimately need a team of people to be able to scale this high touch sales process. So if you don't like the high touch sales process, you'd rather hide behind like an internet e-commerce system, right? That's a clue you might not be wanting to be in this quadrant. Or if you don't feel equipped to do that, or you don't have a product that lends itself to that, like your product might just naturally lend itself to being a lower dollar product that you just sell a lot of, like Tony's chocolate. I just keep coming back to chocolate.
And just as you're listening, just know it's 7:16 a.m. Michelle is
I know it's 7:16 and it's just, I don't even know what's going on with the chocolate conversation. So anyway, these can be clues to help you decide your business model. I hope you're sort of joining those dots as we're talking about this. So if you don't like high touch sales, you don't feel equipped, you don't have a product that lends itself to that, then don't build your business model in that quadrant. And the same goes for low dollar value products. The rule of thumb here is that the lower the dollar value, typically the lower the need for any human touch or customization in the sales process. You know, we've all bought a t-shirt online, never needing to speak to someone, and quickly made our selection, paid, received the goods in the mail. It didn't require a salesperson or a lot of hand-holding, but it did require a lot of tech, a lot of automation, from the way the product was marketed to me, through the way it was displayed on the e-commerce site, through the sales and the purchase process, the automated method of taking payment, the automated method of calculating the shipping and then doing the shipping, all of that relying on technology and automation. And so if you're not set up for that, you either need to quickly get set up or don't build your business model in that quadrant.
I love it. I love that. And it makes so much sense. And getting that right fit is so important. I want to give you an example from her business. But before I do that, Michelle, the first time I bought a big ticket item online, I bought a car. It was the first or second year I was living in America. Yes. And I ordered a BMW convertible. So it wasn't an inexpensive car. I ordered it online, the whole process, which was the most bizarre thing because usually, you know, you go to the car dealership, you hang around, you get shown, you get a cup of tea and whatever. So that one was kind of a little bit outside the box. And I always thought, I don't think I'm going to get this car. So I just bought it online. I did get the car. But I want to give you a Her Business example. So with our Her Business Network membership, we have changed up our model quite a bit in the last couple of years. We've really geared it towards women who want accountability. They want regular check-ins. They want ongoing education. They want attention to the important things like their profitability. And it is a membership. So that's part of that model. Now, we have a very simple application process that is not high touch at all, but we do have a new member call. So we have a bit of touch to welcome people on board, and that is complemented by an online onboarding service. So there's some touch. But then when it comes to bringing people into the mastermind that Michelle and I do, there's a very thorough application process. There is an interview. And a whole lot of things get sent in the mail. There's a whole lot more high touch because it is a high ticket subscription. And so it's not affordable at the lower cost membership for us to do all the things that we do for a high cost membership. Because if we did that, we would just go backwards very, very quickly. But also if someone was joining our fabulous mastermind, and we just went, great, you're in, and sent them an email, they probably wouldn't feel the love and adoration that we have and appreciation for them that is right, is the right fit for that type of transaction. So it's about knowing which quadrant you're fitting into, and taking on board everything Michelle said about the volume value matrix and getting that right fit for you. Now, as you're listening to this explanation, what realizations are you having about your business model? Are you in the right quadrant? Do you need to rethink what quadrant you're in entirely? Or are you squarely exactly where you need to be right now? Or maybe you realize you're selling a high value, low volume product or service, but you've priced it too low to be viable. Or maybe, you're over delivering by providing a Rolls-Royce service for a Volkswagen price. So that's a structural thing that you can change to make your business model far more viable, because you can always change your business model. The first thing is awareness, and that's what we're hoping that you get from this episode here. Awareness is that first step. Once you know you have a business model structure issue, then you can address it and make changes, because if the model's not right, it doesn't matter how much effort and great ideas, etc., that you put into it, you might be stifled before you really get started. For example, memberships have become really popular. And as I said, it's one of my favorite models. I've had a membership for almost 30 years. And it's great to have a membership, but only if you like serving the same clients over and over again for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, or whatever it is that's long term. And you are happy to keep creating new content and opportunities and experiences and support for people ongoingly. There's no point opening the door of membership and having to service people for years if your preference is to get in and out. And that's not a bad thing. Neither one is right or wrong, but a membership requires your long-term commitment. Turning up in an organization and doing a 3-day training and then leaving doesn't. You've got the time around planning, getting there, doing the training, leaving. The same if you have a yoga studio, right? It's one thing people coming in and doing a class, but if you start a yoga membership, now people are looking for something every single month. Different sort of commitment. But if you love, like me, doing something like a membership and fostering a community, then that might be a great model for you. So as we're talking about memberships, we can't go past this point without acknowledging my mentor and friend of both of us, Michelle, Stu McLaren. He really is the master of memberships, and he's helped tens of thousands of business owners create memberships from their knowledge. Product-based memberships, service-based memberships, inexpensive memberships, high-priced memberships. And once a year, he does a course. It's called the Membership Experience, where he walks you through step-by-step how to start a membership, what to put in it, how to market it, what sort of structures you need, how to set yourself up for success. And just as this episode is going to air, I'm going to make sure I'm not lying. Nope. Just as this episode goes to air, he's about to make this year's membership experience available. So I don't have the URL off the top of my head, but head on over to the show notes page, which is going to be at herbusiness.com/ let me give it to you, / right business model, herbusiness.com / right business model. And I'll put a link there to Stu's course, because if you are wanting to start a membership, if this is a business model that you think is right for you, then he's your guy. He's the one you want to be learning from. All right. So back to what I was saying, if you don't feel like you can connect with clients, ongoingly, don't do a membership. If you feel like you much prefer to deal with people in person, then don't feel like you have to do an online offer. I had an events business for 13 years where I traveled consistently, 1 year over 300 nights in hotel rooms, and I was done with that at some point. And so for me, the business model changed from being an in-person live event business to being online. And we made that transition many, many years ago and started running webinars and online courses. So we decided that we would change the business model, review which quadrant we were going to be working in, and make a very conscious choice about where we wanted to be and where we wanted to play.
So much great stuff in what you just said there. First off, big shout out to Stu. Want to just want everything you said about that. And if anybody is doing a membership, if you are playing in that quadrant, whichever quadrant your membership is in, because you can absolutely have high ticket memberships, then do definitely check that training out from Stuart is world class. And I love what you were saying, Suzi, then about preferences. You know, we've been talking a bit about like what makes a viable business model, and you need to make money in your business. And, you know, we all want to get leverage. We all don't want to be working harder than we need to be working. And so being smart about our business model financially is really important. And we're human beings and we get to have what we want. And you don't have to have a business model that is doing something you don't love, because that's also not sustainable. And it's a different kind of not profitable. Do you know what I mean? It might be profitable money-wise, but you're not getting profit from it in terms of satisfaction, fulfillment, and those kinds of things. So I just want to really reinforce what you said about preferences. You can have what you want. And so you may want to play to your strengths. Things may have changed over time, like the great example Suzi did. A business model might have served you for years and the market has changed. Your preferences have changed. Your situation has changed. Maybe you want to take more time off. Maybe you want to dial things up. Maybe this huge opportunity has landed in your lap. Things can change. So let's talk just briefly about the ways to change your model. First off, we've covered one really simple thing you can do. I say simple, but there's lots of worms in this can, but it's a simple decision that you can get clear on quite quickly. Oh, I need to choose a different quadrant. Like choose another quadrant. Make a deliberate decision to say, I am no longer going to be, trying to sell a lot of this low dollar thing when I actually am not set up to create volume. I'm selling 5 of these when I need to sell 500 of these to make some money and have a viable business. So how could I rethink this so it was a high ticket service where the structure of my business only, can support just a few sales a month and I can do high touch and all of that. But how do I create a product where I can charge a lot more, where I can make this really viable in that sense and play to my strengths, play to the structure of my business? So you can just choose another quadrant. You can refine the quadrant you're in. So you might just decide, look, I need to just basically take Suzi and Michelle's advice and realize I'm dabbling around the edges. I'm in the volume quadrant. I need to sell a lot of this low dollar thing. And I just need to get real with myself and say the things that I'm doing are not getting me there. I've got to make some massive changes. So I've got to, start buying Facebook ads. I've got to get experts on my side. I've got to, hustle and find some great strategic alliances where I can tap into the volume of other people's markets. Like I've got to do some refinements and rethinking of the quadrant I'm in. Or maybe I can boost my price up a little bit. Or maybe it makes sense to take it down a little bit, or to take a big piece out of the offer so that I can reduce the price and make it a lot more interesting. Whatever it is, there might be some refinements inside the quadrant that you're in. Another way to change your business model is to add a product in another quadrant or in a higher, sort of more profitable part of the quadrant that you're in addition to the product that you have. Now, let me give you an example because this will make it real. You might have right now, as you're listening to us, or maybe you've been thinking this already, this product I'm selling is not going to be the thing that makes my business sing. My $47 course, I'm never going to make my $1 million business out of this $47 course, looking at the structure that I have. But I know people like it and I know I can sell it and maybe I can get 10 sales a week for that. Now, that's not going to set anybody's hair on fire, but what if I then built a product over in that bottom right quadrant, that low volume, high value quadrant that I could offer to those 5 or 10 people that are buying my course, that suddenly does unlock profit in my business. It suddenly does make everything viable. So I use the course as a way to attract people. I know it's not in itself a profit center. It's almost like a loss leader, a marketing activity where I get some people to pay me a small amount of money that tells me, hey, these are great candidates for my high ticket offer. And so you might say, I need to diversify in my quadrants. I need to add a product in another quadrant. And that's exactly what we did with a product that we offer called the Mastermind Experience. Now, we had a product already in the high value, low volume quadrant, that bottom right quadrant. We didn't need to sell a lot of them. In fact, we keep it limited, and it's a fairly high dollar value offer. And that's our marketing success mastermind that Suzi and I run together. Now, that mastermind we went, oh, you know what? How might it look if we offered a lower dollar mastermind, maybe in another quadrant where we could have more volume and where we could get sales from people that were going to be ideal candidates for our mastermind. And that's exactly what we did. We created the mastermind experience. It's a fraction of the cost of mastermind. We can get a lot more people into that. And then we really, probably break even on that. We deliver a huge amount of value in there. We really treat it like a trial of mastermind. And then a good number of those people apply to join us in mastermind. It becomes a sales avenue for the next product that we're selling. So think really about what you can do in terms of choosing a different quadrant, like getting out of the quadrant you're in, refining the quadrant you're in, or adding a product in another quadrant that kind of makes the whole business model make sense. And the one thing I'll say also about ways to change your model, you may just need to change your thinking, your mindset, up level what you can charge. I see people all the time lowballing themselves. They're selling something that should be high value and they're selling it for low value. And that is setting yourself up for pain and suffering and selling yourself short just every day of the week. So the other way to change your business model is to change your thinking, up level your thinking.
I love that. And I love that last point. And if we catch you undervaluing yourself or your products and services, we will let you know. And it's something that we do, whether it's not a mastermind, our mastermind experience program, which, by the way, is coming up in very soon, in a few weeks. And so if you're a regular listener, stay tuned because we will let you know when that becomes available. And that's a whole month of working with me and Michelle on your marketing and your strategy. We do call that out, so whether we're in a strategy session with a masterminder or we are working with clients at any level, we do like to pull you back to being strategic about your marketing and your business model. And that's why we are such big fans of regular check-ins. How are things going? What's selling? What's not selling? What's costing me a lot of time to deliver? What's costing me a lot of energy to deliver? And really knowing your numbers. How many do I want to sell? Of what? When? At what price point? Right? Really knowing what quadrant you're in, but also getting good advice and feedback from mentors, from coaches, from knowledgeable peers who might also have a similar business model or they've experimented in that business model, and having that think tank, that brains trust, that mastermind to be able to think some of these things through. So all of those things, check-ins, knowing your numbers, getting good advice, they all help you see if you've got the right business model. Now, I love this topic and there's a lot more that we could say about it. It's something we're talking about all the time inside the Her Business Network and inside our Marketing Success Mastermind. So if either of those two are of interest for you, you can head on over to today's show notes for the links to these programs or simply visit herbusiness.com. Now, speaking of links, I mentioned it earlier, but I want to mention it again. I want to give you a link to the show notes page where you will find resources that we've spoken about today, including the volume value matrix. Now, we love sharing tips like this, and I really hope you're taking some wonderful things away from this business models episode. We love to share these tips with as many business owners as possible. So what would really help us, if you enjoyed today's program or any of the shows, is if you would leave us a rating or review on Apple Podcasts. We've got over 100 5-star reviews. And so if you've already given us a 5-star review, thank you so much. If you haven't yet, we would love it if you would do that. And so if you enjoyed today's episode, we'd love it if you would leave us a rating or go the whole hog and leave us a review. The beautiful Anita McLaughlin, also known as the Cozzy Whisperer, for our Aussies, you'll understand what a Cozzy is for our American listeners. It's swimwear. She's got a business called Sequins and Sand. And she just gave us a shout out. She said, "So good, such a brilliant podcast, Suzi." Yeah, it is. Thank you so much, Anita. Sorry, I've gone all horsey. And so thank you, Anita. Thank you for being a regular listener. Thank you for giving feedback. As business owners, right, we know how it is. Sometimes we've got our heads down, producing podcast episodes, running masterminds, doing this, that, and we don't always get to hear when someone's gotten value from what we do. So if you've gotten value from today's episode, let us know. If you've gotten value from someone else, let them know. It takes just a moment and it can make such a big difference to someone else. So anything we mentioned here on the show can be found in today's show notes over at herbusiness.com/right business model, herbusiness.com/right business model. Michelle, what do we have coming up in the next episode?
We're talking about generating online traffic and very specifically how to determine the right budget for online traffic. And this is something, again, we create so many of these show ideas out of things that you are asking us as our listeners, as our clients, as our students, as our members of our mastermind, as the members of the Her Business Network. And this is a big one, Suzi. People want to know, like, what do I spend? How does it work? What is that? What? So we're going to be answering those questions, how to really determine the right budget for your online traffic in the next episode.
And that's coming up 2 weeks from now. So if you don't already subscribe to the show, be sure to hit that subscribe button and know that even if you've never spent money on advertising, there's a budget for you as well. So be sure to listen in. And when you subscribe to the show, you'll get the episode automatically. Michelle, is there anything you want to say before we go?
Taking the time, any time you spend on your business model is time well spent. It is one of those foundation pieces that does so much of the work for you. It puts you either so far in front of the game or so far behind in the game. And so I just encourage you, if this has sparked thoughts for you, take some time, look at this, look at your business model, make the changes, because that's how you can really make a big difference in a short period of time and get things working for you instead of against you. We all need that, right?
Yes, I'm very excited. I really love this topic because I know, as you do, Michelle, what a difference it makes when you get your business model right. Everything falls into place. So we want to thank you so much for listening. We love doing this show for you, and we'll see you next time right here on the Content Sells podcast. Bye for now.